Welcome everybody to the Planning Control Committee, Thursday the 1st of June 2023. My name is Jerry Pierce, I'm Chair of the committee. We'll start with item 1, apologies.
Chair, I've got apologies from Councillor Morgan McGeehan. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Any late items? Thank you very much. You got that, Stephen? Yeah. Item 2, any late items? No, thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on 6th of April 2023. Can I take a mover of those, please? Councillor Rawson, any seconder? Councillor Kerr. Thank you. Item 5, minutes of the meeting of the Conservation and Heritage Advisory Committee held on the 2nd of March 2023. Noted by Councillor Kerr, thank you very much. Item 6, appeal decisions. Is that one for you, Ian? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 items to report. The first one, erection of building to form 3 flats, a 3-storey building, site adjacent to 2 Bromley Street, rear of 126 Kettleston Road. It was an application for a single block, as I say, over 3 storeys on a relatively small site. And if you look on the overhead, you can see the site layout plan at the top and the relatively small square site area. The visual, the elevation in the top left shows a building that would, marry with the style of Bromley Street. Some quite attractive properties along there, but we just felt that the plot was too small. That's a better site location plan. So the plot was too small. The building itself was too constrained in terms of internal layout. There's no external amenity space, and the inspector agreed with us. We'd refuse the application under delegated powers. Councillor Repton was interested in this application and made representations, and there'd been other objections. So we refused it, and we defended the appeal successfully. So that's a good result. And the second item on the list tonight is at 26 Briarley Close. You can see it's in the corner of a cul-de-sac, and it was for a large extension across 2 storeys, wrapped around the building, quite a sizable offering, with an unusual roof configuration and elevational style. So we refused that under delegated powers, and the inspector agreed with us on those grounds as well, Chair. So played 2, won 2. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Well done. Good start to the year. Item 7, development control performance quarter 4. Is that you again, Ian?
Me again, Chair. Thank you. Yeah. Happy to take any questions on this. It's just, for new members, it's just a quarterly report on our performance. Paul mentioned some of the performance measures earlier at the training session. We spell them out in this report. We're doing pretty well. I'd just direct you to probably paragraph 4.14 that shows performance over the last few years in terms of major and non-major application performance, and we're doing okay given the pressures of various things. So happy to take any questions on that as well, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a welcome report, and I congratulate all the officers concerned, because clearly the work is still coming in with less staff, and at the training we've just had, the casework that each officer has is substantial, and obviously there is different ways of working. I mean, my main question is firstly to congratulate and notice under 4.9 in this quarter we were 13% above government set national targets. So I think, that's to be welcomed. But my main point is, since the pandemic, has there been different ways of working, and have our targets been affected?
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Yeah, we've tried to maximise remote working. I mean, from March 2020 onwards, we're all working at home, and so what we did, we set up various groups team meetings set in the diary every Wednesday. We've got a senior officer group who meets. We meet every Wednesday morning as well. We've got another officer group and what we call a roundtable session where we share ideas remotely. So even though we may not be in the building, we share those ideas and we keep an eye on performance, because our back office system, we have a traffic light system within that called the enterprise system, and we basically monitor the applications that come through in that, make sure that they go out on time as best we can. We sign them off under delegated authority. Sarah and Laura help out with that, which is a great assistance, and we try and monitor it as best we can. There are certain things that are beyond our control. If consultees are stretched, or we've got other consultees from beyond the authority, if they're a statutory consultee and they've got workload pressures, it can extend time periods for determination. But we try and agree extensions of time that are reasonable. As I say, as best we can, we try and foresee these things. So that's the way we monitor things, Councillor Bolton. But thank you for your kind words, and we'll continue to monitor things and hopefully perform as well as we are doing at the moment. So thank you.
That's great, thanks, Ian. Item 9, site visits protocol. Oh no, sorry. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Item 8, sorry, public speaking protocol. I do apologise. Ian, that you again.
Yeah, I've nothing to raise there, Chair. Just something for your information, something that all members need to be aware of course, in terms of our public speaking protocol. There is a new addition at the back of that. Point 17 talks about not reading out presentations in lieu of any speaker who is unable to attend the meeting. We've done that previously, and we've tripped ourselves up previously as well, because people have complained that when we've read out presentations, it's been longer than the 3 minutes afforded to people who were here on the evening. So we've included that under Appendix 1, but largely that's for your benefit going forward to control how we speak at this meeting, Chair.
Thanks, Ian.
Chair, do you want to take a
Yeah, can we take a proposal in a second on that? Lucy, you going to propose? Oh, you've got a question. You've got
I'm just going to make a comment, Chair, because one of the other changes has been to give an applicant the right to speak if there's a member who's intending to speak against an application. I've had somebody come to me in this situation, so I welcome this change.
Chair, just to sort of actually say that there's always an overriding discretion of the Chair to allow people to speak, irrespective of the protocols as well.
Can we go for a mover of that motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Hassel, thank you very much. All those in favour?
That's carried.
That's carried. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Item 9, site visits protocol. Ian?
Yes, me again, Chair. Just one error in this that we need to tidy up. Paragraph 3.2, it refers to Conservation Advisory Committee. Well, they are no longer. So it's Conservation Heritage Advisory Committee under 3.2, second bullet point. But yeah, again, that's to guide members going forward with situations where we visit sites and what we do when we're on site. So just tidying that up and making members aware of that.
Chair, can I just sort of add something extra on this? It's probably worth just reminding members and saying for new members that any site visit carried out by the committee is formally part of the committee meeting as such. So there's two potential points I think worth making is that whilst we can appreciate that members can't always attend site visits, it's not always possible. We encourage all members to try and attend all such meetings because it is a valuable insight to members which they will miss out on if they don't attend the meetings. The other point is also the fact that, as I say, it is a formal meeting, and therefore both members and officers attending need to be conduct the meeting carefully, particularly given that unlike this meeting, it is not recorded formally, there's often not members of the public there to witness what's going on. So care has got to be taken when going on site visits, how you conduct the matter, and therefore you need to be fully aware of the protocols. What you should not be doing is discussing matters with any objectors there or the applicant there. And again, the merits of the matter should only be discussed here. The meeting is there solely for you to see the site, for you to ask questions of the officers present, to find out information necessary, but not to discuss the merits. And as I say, I'd just emphasise exercising caution, both for officers and members attending the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Sorry, Lucy.
Yeah, I had two questions, and they relate to the fact that there's the, I think, stronger emphasis that they are a formal meeting of the committee. Our formal meetings are published on the website, the dates and times of those meetings, and other members of the council can actually then have a look and see and attend, as could members of the public. Now, that would be a significant change to what we normally expect, but if it is a formal meeting of the committee, wouldn't we expect to have that publicity, or do we need to make some exception to that, just so that we are compliant with what we expect to be doing? And I think the situation for local members who may want to know it's happening or may not, I think that is also something that we ought to be explicit about.
I think the key point here is that this is simply an information gathering element of the exercise. That's why I emphasise that you shouldn't be discussing the merits, because the merits, discussion on merits, should be in before the public who are watching. So I mean that's a key difference. I think this is a sort of informative exercise to inform you as members. No, nothing further. So I take the point in terms of sort of the other committees, but it's slightly different. It's a point that would probably worth discussing with Paul sort of further on sort of. But I think you can distinguish this particular aspect of the committee.
Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, I think, Chair, from my previous experience being a returner, site visits are just that. We are there to have a look at the site. We are not taking any decisions, and I'm surprised Councillor Kerr's queried it. She should know in her time on this committee, we do not take any discussions about the site when we go and visit. It is purely for information, and where possible, and certainly when I've done site meetings before, there are people that gather, there are local people who get to know when we're going, but we don't enter in a dialogue, we don't have a dialogue with them. We say this is a formal committee and we have to, and I'm sure you as chair will expedite matters at the meeting. But no decisions are taken, it is purely what it says, a site visit. And I think, you know, we're all sensible, or should be, and we will be mindful of that situation and not enter into a debate or promise anything whilst we are there.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Can someone move the recommendation, please? Councillor Bolton, thank you very much. Who is the seconder? Councillor Hassel, all those in favour? That's moved, thank you very much. On to item 10, application to be considered. I've been requested by Councillor Whitby if we can move item 10.5 up to the top of the list, and if that's okay with everybody. Can you just 1 minute, Councillor Whitby? And also item 10.4, because Councillor Khan isn't here tonight, that's gone off committee and it's back to the officers, yeah. So item 10.4 won't be there, and then 10.5 will move straight back up. So 10.5 is Enfield Road, 3 Enfield Road. Is that you, Ian, again? Thank you very much.
I'm monopolising this meeting, Chair, aren't I? Nothing to add beyond the housekeeping item that was circulated, the statement by Starbright Living, which was circulated yesterday, just providing points of clarification for the use of the proposed building that is part of this, that forms a central part of this application. So nothing of substance to add, Chair, and just will invite Councillor Whitby to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much. You have 3 minutes, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to do this earlier. I appreciate it. So, back in November, I came along to this committee and explained that a 3-bed semi-detached property was completely unsuitable accommodation for a children's home housing children with extremely challenging behavioural issues with 2-to-1 staffing. This application for an annex whose footprint is around the same size as the ground floor of the house, containing office space, a sensory space and a bedroom, is proof that I was right. The company who still haven't placed any children at 3 Enfield have either figured out that it wasn't fit for purpose by themselves, or they're being schooled by someone who knows better. Although I accept that adding this facility will make their operation as a children's home much more viable, it also opens the door to more children being placed, more noise, more parking, etc. As for increasing the number of children, the company has said, I can confirm that Starbright Living Limited has no plans or to even consider increasing the number of children it can accommodate. So they're not saying that they won't increase the number of residents, they're just saying they've got no plans to do so. And there is a condition saying they can't increase the number of residents, but as far as I'm aware, you know, if they put another application into the planners, it'll be considered. This application simply increases the risk to the vulnerable adults living across the road. It increases the noise, the disruption to the neighbours at number 1. It exacerbates an already chronic parking problem as it reduces the limited parking on site because the reduction of the garage. And it also reduces the outdoor space. So I'd love you to oppose this and reject this application, as would all the neighbours in the vicinity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Whitby. Do you want to respond to that, Ian?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Yes, the accommodation, whilst it's of a sizable footprint, it still retains frontage car parking and a private rear garden, as you can see from the site location plan. The planning permission that relates to the use of the host dwelling for a care home does include condition number 6, which stipulates it can only accommodate up to 2 children, and with a staffing arrangement specified in with the application documents that supported that application, which is for 4 staff per shift. So it's on a 2-to-1 ratio. All that is governed by Ofsted as well, and the information from Starbright Living is that they have no plans to do so, and that they will be working within the parameters of their Ofsted regulations. If they were to come forward to vary condition 6, they can make an application to vary that, but we would consider that, of course, within the context of planning policy, judgment on the issues, and the comments of any objectors. So for the purpose of this application, Chair, I think the scale and the design, whilst it's a large construction, it sits within the corner of that site, which is quite sizable. It would take away a dilapidated garage structure. It wouldn't overwhelm that part of the plot. There's the existing garage. It would sit next to that lean-to extension. There would be a gap of about 1.2 metres up to that lean-to extension, and a gap of about 1 metre up to the side boundary. So it fills in that space, but it doesn't overwhelm the street scene by virtue of the street scene's overall layout and context. And for the purpose of this application, Chair, I think if you wanted to control, you could add a condition to say that it shall only be used for purposes of staff accommodation. They've indicated that a staff member may sleep there. There is a bed space indicated because they do have long shifts, 4 days on, 6 days off. So you could condition it that it's only related to staff accommodation for purposes of sleeping, recreation and office space, and leave it at that. I think that would tie it up nicely. But as I say, Chair, I think we've got a reasonable application, and for the conditions included in the report, I think I would move that recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions? Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've listened very carefully to what Councillor Whitby has outlined to us, and I have some of the same concerns. However, my point is on 143, paragraph 7.1, in that it states permission for the use of the site as a children's residential care home was granted by this committee in 2022. So clearly, that's still abiding by. What I do think is sensible, and thinking of the situation at many of our other children's homes, particularly Cricklewood, is I know there are concerns from the local area, wherever a children's home is, and a lot of those concerns are unguided, shall I say. And I think that's a shame, because children need a safe place, and particularly the vulnerable children who we predominantly deal with, they need a safe haven. And obviously safeguarding issues have to be abided by. But what I think is sensible, and I obviously note also under 8.4, the application's time limit for the decision is the 9th of June, so we better be smart about it. But nevertheless, I think what, I was going to say Councillor Woodhead's just said, Mr Woodhead has just outlined to us, is the extra condition for the use of the extension. I think that's a very sensible way forward. And obviously, if there are concerns, I'm sure the local councillors will act on them, and indeed, if it needs to come back to committee to be tweaked after a certain amount of time, we have done that before. We do need these children's homes, and they predominantly are in residential areas. But in my experience, if there are issues, we can deal with them in a sensible way.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Kerr.
Just to support what Councillor Bolton has said, in that we need to be able to provide suitable accommodation for some of our very challenging young people in the city. The space here and the location, I think we made the right decision last year, and I think the additional space will actually make it easier for those children to be accommodated and for their needs to be supported in the special environments that they're being provided within that additional space. But because it's also not a private house, if there are issues, there will be formal organisations who can be, councillors will be able to approach and to be able to formally complain about the way in which the management has been done, whether it's through Ofsted or through the care side of situations as well. So if there are any issues, I hope that they can be dealt with separately from the planning system.
Thank you. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't vote in favour of this when it came before the committee last time, although we've obviously got to be mindful this is a separate application. But some of the same issues do arise from that, in my mind, in terms of parking, and that was one of the issues that I had concerns about last time. It's not only the staff who are need to park, but it's the professionals who come and go from there and who visit the young people as well. I'm a little bit concerned as well in terms of the precedent it might set for these types of applications in the future. Whether the applicant did know that when they applied, we don't know. Whether, as Councillor Whitby suggested, that it wasn't a suitable space, and then to think about coming back later with almost double the size of the footprint at a later time. So I wouldn't want that to become a precedent, shall we say, for other people who are maybe getting permission for one thing and then coming back shortly afterwards and requesting double the size of the provisions. So it is a tricky one, having permission already been granted, but I tend to feel this just falls a bit too much on the side of an overly large structure on that site. Say it's the same size as the existing property, which just it does give me some concerns about the dominance, the massing of it, and also the parking spaces that potentially have been lost as a result of that.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there anything in the conditions about, or we can put conditions about parking in? Anything like that?
There is a travel plan condition that they are working towards under the main use permission. But yes, we could include areas, the area at the front of the site to be safeguarded for parking only, if you felt that to be reasonable, in addition to the suggested condition about the use of this being only for staff and their associated ancillary needs. Could do that.
Thanks, Ian. Any further questions? Could someone move this with the conditions set out, with the extra conditions? Are you happy to do that, Sarah? Yeah. Is there a second for that? Councillor Hassel. All those in favour?
Five in favour, Chair.
5 in favour, 2 against. And against? 1 against.
1 against,
1
Chair.
against. And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm happy, if everybody else is happy, if we do the Frygate one next, with the Bradshaw Way being a rather large document, if everybody's ready for that one. Sarah, is that you? Where's Sarah? Where's Sarah? Where's she? Down the other end. There you are. There you are. There you are. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I've got housekeeping updates that would have been circulated for members on this one. We received 2 further objections to the applications. One was a third-party objection and one from Councillor Martin, mainly raising concerns in relation to daylight impacts on the adjacent yoga studio. We also received a letter from Smith Marston Surveyors, which is a rebuttal to the BRE assessment of daylight to the adjacent yoga studio. For those members who've been on the committee a while, they will recall that this was considered at the December meeting and was deferred for concerns that members had in relation to the 2-storey apartment building and use of the rear yard, the applications for amendments and a revision to the scheme. Since then, the applicant has revised the design and form of the apartment building and provided additional information submitted with the application. The full application relates to 1670 Friargate, which is a Grade 2 listed building, former Easy's on Friargate in the conservation area. It's in the city centre, and the ground and first floors are currently occupied as a restaurant. Permission is sought for change of use of part of the restaurant comprising first, second and third floors of the listed building to residential use to form 3 apartments, 1 and 2 bed units and a 6-bed HIMO. The original proposal for the rear yard is for a 2-storey building which had 2 apartments, 1-bedroom units. They've now amended that scheme so the building is still 2-storey, but it comprises of 1 3-bedroom apartment over 2 floors. This is in response to concerns about access to daylight and residential amenity to the occupants of the ground floor unit. The current proposal is a 2-storey unit with living space on the first floor and 2 bedrooms on the ground floor. The elevation of treatment of that building has also been amended to improve the design and proportions of the windows and the appearance to tie in better with the listed building. The applicant has provided revised internal daylight assessment in response to the revisions made under BRE guidance for the amendments to the design and layout of the apartments. The results show that daylight to all of the habitable rooms in the proposed building would meet the guidance and provide adequate daylight to the new 2-storey apartment. There will be some daylight impacts to the adjacent yoga studio from the new building, so the BRE report submitted concludes that whilst there would be some impact on daylight, the guidance would be met for daylight into that building. The layout and arrangement of the bin storage within the rear yard has also been amended in response to concerns raised by committee. The layout and vision of bins to the restaurant, the two-storey apartment building and the yoga studio have all been set out on the revised layout plan. Servicing access for the restaurant and the apartments is via the gated access onto George Street. Cycle parking for resident cycles is also proposed within that yard. 48 third-party objections were received to the original application. 2 further objections have received in relation to the amendments. Concerns relate primarily to the proposed development in the rear yard and impacts on daylight, privacy and use of the adjacent building on George Street. And also restricted emergency access and servicing of bins. There are considered to be benefits to this proposal in terms of conversion and reuse of the listed building for residential use, particularly given the upper floors have historically been for residential accommodation. The site is a designated heritage asset. Another listed building in the conservation area, particular consideration must be given to any harmful impacts on the significance and character of those assets. Such a permission should not be granted unless in accordance with the heritage guidance in the NPPF. There is considered to be less than substantial harm to the heritage asset caused by the proposed intervention works to the upper floors of the listed building and the development of the new residential building in the yard. In accordance with paragraph 202 of the NPPF, the public benefits of bringing the listed building back into viable residential use and forming a high-quality living environment and increasing the vitality of the city centre carry significant weight. And the new extension would also deliver additional high-quality housing in a well-designed and complementary form. These benefits, we feel, outweigh the limited harm to the listed building and therefore meet the heritage test in the NPPF. In response to the amendments made, the Highways officers raised no further objections to the revisions made to the rear yard. And overall, proposed development would deliver additional 5 units of new housing in the city centre in a highly sustainable location and contributing to the city's housing supply. The scheme would form a high-quality living environment with no adverse impacts on the highway network. Heritage tests are considered to be met, such that approval is recommended subject to the recommended conditions. You have one speaker.
We have 2 speakers. We have 2 speakers. We do have 2 speakers. Mr. Atwell, Stenson Vale Properties Limited. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. So I just want to start off by saying that the objective of the scheme is to restore the heritage asset and create a thriving living environment for the community. The issues that we faced with this building is that ZZ went into administration back in 2020-21. The regulated tenant above decided to depart the building, ultimately leaving all areas, residential and retail and back of house, in a dilapidated state and in need of maintenance. COVID and lack of footfall has further contributed to inability to attract investment and tenants to the unit. We have undertaken some external facade repairs and roof repairs as much as we can to attract retail tenants, but that's failed currently. We've also had reports of vermin and antisocial behaviour in the courtyard, which is a problem for health and safety of our neighbours and residents in the area, particularly the people working in the yoga studio. The original scheme has been scaled back, so the scheme that we brought in feasibilities we undertook, we did have 12 apartments in totality, so the scheme brought to council has been scaled back previously. And we've got backing from Derby City Council Regeneration, who are providing a grant funding, and the Cathedral Quarter Bid, who have also provided their backing for the scheme. Since our previous attempts in December, we've reviewed it with Latham's, undertaken a daylight assessment. Obviously, daylight and privacy are the main concerns for our neighbours. 2 elements have been undertaken. Daylight and sunlight to the residential units has passed comfortably. The internal daylight to 4 George Street has been assessed, and that's all windows and rooms fulfil the BRE guidance. With 14 George Street specifically, it's 3 out of 14 windows that fall slightly short of the BRE guidance. However, a yoga studio is assessed as a commercial building, so therefore it's not necessarily categorised under the BRE guidance. Currently, we also note that the windows have obscure glass and some bars, so therefore is already limiting some light there. And we would assume to operate a yoga studio, they would use light such as an office would, which will be artificial light. We don't think it would hinder the operation. And a final point on that would be that we know that the yoga studio operates till 9 p.m. So therefore, I think daylight may not be as much a consideration. And I know I'm out of time, but my final point would be we have addressed the majority of the points that were made in the committee in December through a detailed document, and hopefully that can be taken into consideration as well, which addresses the bins, the fire strategy, etc.
You've had your leeway. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Hi, my company is Casey Jones Conference and Events, and we own the Coach House at George Street, which is adjoined to 16 to 17 Friargate. Operating as a very successful yoga studio, open 7 days a week with 50 people a day. There is a covenant over the rear yard not to build in respect of the loss of light and air to the for emergency purposes, and for us to store a bin. Firstly, I'm not against any developments that improve and enhance an area, but I'm aghast at against developments that have a damaging effect on the surrounding properties, and those where the developers blatantly ignore the title deeds and also try to influence my tenants by asking them to withdraw our objections because it's causing him and his family stress and a lot of money. Our objections only relate to the new build house. I'm astonished to see that Planning Department would like to pass this application with 70 objections already received, now 72, by the community. The feedback from the December meeting was the Planning Committee felt that this area was too small. I see little point in the original deferrals. The concerns were raised and the committee have not been addressed. Agreed, the footprint, the number of homes has changed, but the footprint hasn't. The change to the bins is from 6 to 4, plus the 2 additional ones that we are allowed to store. But my question is 4 bins enough? 5 apartments, 1 HMO and a busy restaurant. Cynically, I suggest this reduction is simply to get it through planning. The bins for the new build will be on the busy street. Where? Outside our building, I'm presuming, because there's nowhere else for them to go. On a busy street, which has a lot of pedestrians walking by. So 6 commercial bins and 2 additional bins on George Street, not forgetting the bike store and the noisy air source heat pumps. The title deeds of 1670 Friargate state not to carry out any building on the property that will interfere or affect the rights of light to air in the retained land, which is the Coach House. The new buildings will, without a doubt, interfere with this right of light. The developer's loss of light report states that it will be minimal. Our report states that it will be considerable. The council told me the loss of light for a commercial building is not the same as residential, and the BRE guide that states the guidelines may also be applied to non-existing domestic buildings where the occupants have a reasonable expectation of light. Natural daylight is essential for yoga. All of our windows, bar 1, are at the rear of this building. The plan results in a direct view into the house, into the yoga studio, vice versa, and no privacy for either party. The simple question is, anybody in this room thinking that a building being erected 1.5 metres from an existing one wouldn't affect the loss of light? Without all these reports, common sense now is in there. The developers have shown a blatant disregard to the title deals covenant. A fire escape, with the escape route reduced to 1.5 metres, we have a great concern if there ever was an emergency. What plans are there for the noisy restaurant deliveries? How will they deliver? How will they roll beers? They will go through the yard, passing through the new home and the yoga studio with a 1.5 metre gap. If this is passed, I do intend to pursue an injunction to cease build to the developer due to the breach of the covenant of the title deeds. The developers say the new builds are essential for making the scheme viable. In my opinion, this is sheer greed. It is a completely overbearing, cramped form of development that will have a catastrophic effect on the yoga studio. Incidentally, congratulated in this much 3 1/4 bid publications. It is not conducive with the Grade 2 listing or the area. The yoga studio have fought long and hard to survive the pandemic to build up a fantastic creative business, one that has no privacy and no future, with the windows of the pro's new house looking directly into it. Thank you for your time, and also to Councillor Martin for her support and objections.
Thank you very much. Sarah, have you got any comments on those comments? Please.
Most of the comments made by Ms Cadman-Jones are things that were raised by the last committee in December, and the applicant has sought to justify and amend the scheme to address those concerns. Like I said, they've put in a lot of supporting information, they've amended the layout of the yard and the design and form of the building in order to address those concerns. We are now happy that the building gets sufficient daylight. We're happy that there isn't going to be a significant loss of light to the yoga studios such that they couldn't operate their business. As has been said, the BRE guidance does set out that non-domestic buildings don't have the same right to light that a residential property does, and the caveat is that any small workshops or some offices which need good levels of daylight. In this case, we've considered yoga studio type of use that it isn't one that would specifically require good levels of daylight, given the nature of its use. But having said that, the yoga studio does have 10 windows to the yoga space, and some of them are affected by the building, some of them aren't. So, we are satisfied that the applicant has done enough for us to be able to support the scheme.
You can, Paul.
Just for members' benefit, we had a training session for members of the public earlier, and for members who are watching, covenants aren't relevant to planning from our training, and also it's not necessarily the number of objections but the quality that I referred to last time. Quality of those objections, not the number. But the principal one I needed to make was that covenants aren't relevant to the determination of the planning process. Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Any comments, Lucy?
I welcome that the historic building is hopefully going to find a new use, and to have the support for it to be returned to a good condition, and for that to be a viable building. I am, however, still concerned that that the scheme is trying to squeeze too much into too small a space. I had concerns before about the amount of space for the bins and the bin storage, and I still have those concerns because we've got 3 areas of bin stores, and there was a plan that showed this, that one, I think, that there's the bins for the yoga studio, there's the bins for the commercial building, which are within the inner courtyard, and then there are the bins for all the residential schemes in the back corner. Now, they're 210-litre bins, which is like having 3 blue bins and 3 supersized blue bins and 3 supersized black bins. But we know that people in HIMOs, people in high density housing, are more likely to be getting takeaways, and therefore do have more waste than an average household. And even the 3-bedroomed property could have 4 adults in it easily, or children in nappies. And I can't see any potential for expanding the waste management in that area. So firstly, I would like some sort of assurance that we can manage that, and there is a scheme to deal with if a fortnightly collection of blue bins and black bins is not going to work for the residential element here. My second concern, and this is something I think was sitting at the back of my mind before, but it's come to the fore now because of the appeal that we heard about earlier on in this meeting, which was dismissed, which was for some flats where the footprint was too small and there wasn't any amenity space. We've all lived through COVID and we all knew how important outdoor space was during that period. And outdoor space we know is important anyway, it just highlighted it. But this takes up the only potential bit of outdoor space for the flats and for the HMO and turns it into more people who have no outdoor space. It's not a big space, but there's enough space there to be able to have a barbecue or something in the evening if it was going to be used as amenity space for all the flats. And I feel that we haven't resolved the storage, and I'd like some comments about amenity space and why amenity space is not needed for this bit of very dense housing, but was needed for that one that officers decided to refuse.
Thanks, Lucy. Sarah?
Just in relation to the bins, the residential units, they've shown the layout, so they've now set out separate bin storage for the proposed residential use, the existing restaurant and the existing yoga studio. The residential units, which would comprise 5 units, probably housing between 12 and 15 people, would have 2 1100 size commercial bins for those 12 to 15 people, which, as you say, would probably be collected on either weekly or 2-weekly basis. So they are very large bins for a relatively small number of residents. So I think, you know, it's not necessarily a planning issue. It is something that they have to deal with in terms of building regs and waste management requirements, but we are satisfied that that bin capacity is sufficient for the number of residents who would be housed on the site. In terms of lack of outdoor space, I mean, outdoor space is sometimes provided in city centre and urban locations, but in a city centre location such as this on Friargate, where buildings obviously are very tightly packed, there are many cases in this part of the city centre where apartment schemes and residential properties don't have outdoor amenity space. So, you know, given its location, we can't insist on outdoor provision, but obviously they do have access to the city centre. Cathedral Green is close by, so we're happy that there is sufficient level of amenity to give a good living environment for the future occupants.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other comments? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I have been reassured by some of the changes that have been made to this particular scheme. I wonder if you could, though, somebody could just point out where the bin storage area is on the amended maps, just so that we can note that. That's that area there. Okay. And over there. Lovely. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Lovely, thank you for that. So yeah, just in terms of the listed building and bringing it back into use, it is a important heritage asset, and I think for the sustainability of the wider city centre, it is something that we should be encouraging additional residential use, particularly bringing older buildings like this back into use. Yeah, I think it's pleasing that the applicants taken on board the comments that were made last time.
Thanks, Martin. Any other comments from anybody? Somebody like to move to the vote? Councillor Bolton, seconder. Councillor Rawson.
Three in favour, Chair.
3 in favour. Against?
3 against, Chair.
You have a casting vote.
I would go for the comments that Councillor Rawson's put, to be quite honest. To bring something like this up to a certain standard. I think the applicant has looked to satisfy all of the conditions, and so I would pass this application. Thank you. Approve that, yeah. Thank you. Now we move on to item 10.3, which is the listed building consent. That's you again, Sarah, I believe.
Thanks, Chair. Given members have approved the planning application, if members are happy with the benefits of the scheme, that they outweigh the less than substantial harm as required by paragraph 202 of the NPPF, and then I recommend approval as per the recommendation in your report.
Thanks, Sarah. Any comments on that? Or do we move straight to that? Councillor Bolton, yep. Councillor Rawson, you want to second that one again? All those in favour?
7 in favour, Chair. 8 in favour, Chair, sorry.
That's application passed. Thank you. We now go back up to the top. Item 10.1, Bradshaw Way Retail Park. And we have Laura. It says, is your throat okay?
Yes.
That's all right, that's all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Laura.
Good evening, councillors. This outline planning application relates to the Bradshaw Way Retail Park and seeks permission to demolish the existing retail units and, in principle, redevelop the site with a mixed-use development comprising of residential, commercial and office uses, with ancillary developments including car parking, cycle parking and landscaping. Before considering the main report, there are a number of housekeeping items for your attention, and they include the late items that were circulated yesterday, which includes the letter from the agent, which seeks to extend the outline time limit for the application and provide further information and clarity on heritage matters. The updated comments from the Derwent Valley Mills Partnership, which reiterated that their previous comments remain relevant. And the third is the third paragraph of section 6.2 entitled Applications Involving Provision of Housing needs to be updated as our standard method has changed, and this number is now increased from 1,255 to 1,266 per year. The final update is this afternoon we received the comments of ICOMOS from the World Heritage Centre, whose comments align with the objections of Historic England Derwent Valley Mills Partnership, and they conclude that the Eagle Quarter and Bradshaw Way developments will, in their current form, individually and cumulatively lead to harm of the outstanding universal value of the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage property and should therefore not be approved. I'd now like to turn to the main report. This application is in a pure outline format with all matters reserved. Therein, considering this application, members should consider whether the site is acceptable for redevelopment with the land use profile of residential, commercial and office uses. Matters such as landscaping, scale, access and external appearance will all be considered at the reserved matters stage. That being said, the application is accompanied by a suite of parameters plans which show the maximum limits of the development and how a development of this scale will be facilitated on this site. The reserved matters applications would need to broadly accord with these parameters plans, which include building heights and distances between the blocks. The indicative layout comprises of 5 blocks as shown on page 3 of your report. These blocks will be of varying heights and set within landscaping, which would improve pedestrian connectivity to and within the site, as indicated on page 5 of your report. The quantum of land use proposed on the site are contained within the table 4.1 on page 4 of your report. These are maximums, and any reductions to the scale of the buildings would result in reductions in the floor spaces created and the number of residential units proposed. The report before you comprehensively sets out the material considerations of the application and provides the full responses of the consultees. I do not wish to rehearse these in full, but draw your attention to a number of key points. As the application is an outline with all matters reserved, we are only considering the principle of redevelopment of the site at this time. Therefore, matters such as ecology, biodiversity, land drainage, flood risk, contamination, noise and air quality will will be considered in full at later stages and can be satisfactorily dealt with by condition. The consideration of highways impacts are a slightly more complex one, and the full comments of transport planning are set out within your report. At the outline stage, the decision maker must be confident that the upper parameters of the development would not have a severe impact on the public highway. The application is accompanied by a robust transport assessment, which has been updated during the life of the application. This assessment has considered the potential trip generation of the development in the context of unconstrained car parking. The final trip generation is anticipated to be much lower than what is utilised in the assessment. This is due to the low level of car parking provided and the sustainable location of the site. The trip generation submitted by the applicant has provided a robust assessment. In the future year scenarios within the assessment, it does show that the Ring Road junction is predicted to operate within capacity during the AM peak, but potentially over capacity at the PM peak. This demonstrates that the inner Ring Road junction is close to its operational capacity. This highlights the importance of constraining the parking levels on the application site, which will in turn reduce the number of trips associated. Therefore, if any further car parking spaces are proposed or the scale of development changes, further highways assessments will be required, as set out within the recommended conditions. That being said, this level of limited car parking is considered to be sufficient, given the highly sustainable city centre location of the development, the close proximity of the bus station and the train station. Therefore, there are no highway objections to the proposal, and it's considered that the development would broadly comply with the provisions of the National Planning Policy Framework and Policy CP23. The application has generated support from colleagues at Marketing Derby and within the St Peter's and Cathedral Quarter bids, along with the design review panel and other third parties. However, the application has also generated objection from historic consultees, including Historic England, Conservation, Heritage and Advisory Committee, the Council's Built Environment Officer and the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Partnership. The objections raised are primarily concerned with the tallest building on the junction of London Road and Bradshaw Way, measuring up to 113 metres, some 19 stories, and the harmful impact it could have on the setting of heritage assets. It should be noted that heritage consultees have no objection to the principle of demolishing the existing buildings and the redevelopment of the site, but do object to the scale of the development, all confirming that reduction in the height of Block 3, which is the tallest block, would lessen any harm. But it should be noted that the layout of the site has been done so that the tallest building is on the lowest slope of the site. It has been previously agreed that the site could accommodate a tall building, albeit the proposal is somewhat taller than suggested in the tall building study. The study forms part of the local plan evidence base and provides a guiding rationale for tall building opportunities across the city. It is not a policy for decision making. This is an outline application with all matters reserved, and therefore, in terms of decision making, you're being asked to determine the principle of the demolition of the existing retail buildings and redevelopment of the site, agreeing the range of uses, with the redevelopment broadly complying with the submitted design code, the indicative master plan and the parameters plans. So the subsequent reserved matters applications will allow the Council the opportunity to assess design, scale, appearance and external materials, which all have an impact and influence on the scheme. The application as amended during its life has been properly considered in accordance with the relevant policies and the development plan. The heritage test and the NPPF have been given full regard, and the consultee comments have been weighed in the balance against the public benefits of the proposal. In my opinion and judgment, the overall public benefits of the proposal outweigh the identified less than substantial harm to the designated heritage assets, and there is a clear and compelling need to redefine the city centre, regenerating its purpose, growing its economic potential and improving the city centre's offer, and the scheme has the potential to secure a multitude of social, environmental and economic benefits. Those benefits are set out within sections 7.3 and 7.8 of your report, and include, amongst others, the delivery of up to 420 homes on a sustainable brownfield site. The challenges facing the city centre economy have increased following the pressure exerted by COVID-19, and the overall purpose and function of the city centre is changing. Members will be acutely aware of the importance of housing delivery, particularly in highly sustainable locations such as this. All facilities and amenities would be on the doorstep of future residents, and city centre housing delivery also in part reduces the pressure on greenfield sites and more sensitive locations. However, these benefits need to be weighed against the impacts of the development and the strong concerns raised by important consultees and colleagues at Historic England and the Derwent Valley Mills Heritage Partnership. The historic core and architectural fabric of the city is an integral part of its attraction, and the objection by Historic England means that any decision to grant outline permission, subject to the various conditions and legal agreement, triggers a referral to the Secretary of State. The important advice, comments and objections from the specialist heritage consultees have been fully considered. However, on balance, this outline application is considered to deliver a range of public benefits that would, in this case, outweigh the objections and identified level of harm on designated heritage assets. This outline application will be accompanied by a range of conditions to ensure that all reserve matters deliver a high standard of overall design to meet the wider government aspirations to achieve beautiful and well-designed places. And in my opinion and judgment, the overall public benefits of the proposal outweigh the identified less than substantial harm the identified and designated heritage assets, and the proposal accords with the development plan when considered as a whole. Your recommendation is to be minded to grant planning permission and refer the application to the Secretary of State as outlined in section 8.1 of your report. There are no speakers.
Thanks very much, Laura. It just held out then, your throat, didn't it? It really did. Any comments on this one, please? Councillor Bolt.
I think this is to be welcomed, Chair. You know, we need economic regeneration in our city, and we also, as a city, are encouraging city centre living as well. And I think this ticks the boxes. I drove up Bradshaw Way yesterday, and I just happened to look whilst I was in the queue of traffic. And it's just the site we're talking about. It's just the tin huts. There is no architectural merit to the city there. And I can remember, I think it was Mick Walker who was sat where you were sat. And the following day, after we agreed this application, which was many years ago now, perhaps I'm showing my age too much, he had no end of complaints the following day. Why have you let a load of tin huts go on that site when really it's a prominent part of our city? And when you think of the redevelopment that's already going on there, Castle Ward, Nightingale Quarter, former DRI site, we are trying to bring city centre living as well as good quality planning back into the city centre. And I think we'd be balmy if we didn't agree the outline for this site this evening, because it ticks all the boxes in my view. I know that we are agreeing the principle and the demolition of what's there already, but I think we'd be silly not to agree this outline with reserve matters, because we really need this in our city for the economic regeneration, as I said, and the city centre living aspect.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I totally agree. I'll come back on a few points on that. Councillor Orson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm strongly in favour of this application. I think it's an important part of the jigsaw in terms of repurposing the city centre and helping bring it back to life after various things that have hit, internet shopping, COVID, etc. So I think this will bring more people into living in the city centre, increase vibrancy, and in turn support the other businesses that are based there. I think, as Councillor Bolton said, the existing buildings don't have any architectural merit, I think, whatsoever, and almost anything would be an improvement on what's there already. But this does look like a very exciting scheme. It looks, if it's done properly, it can be done to a very high standard, and but we'll come back to that in the future in the more detailed proposals. I'm not against the idea of tall buildings. It's a city centre. That's what you would normally expect in a city centre. What's important though is the location and the quality of the individual application, as I've said, the design and the quality of the materials that will be used. This particular site, it's a gateway site. It's on the inner ring road. It's very prominent, and it would benefit from high quality buildings and developments such as this. And equally, in terms of contributing to the council's housing target as well, we've heard earlier on that we don't have a 5-year supply, and the way that we're built up almost to the city boundaries, higher density living in the city centre is the only way that we're going to be able to contribute realistically, very much in terms of new housing provision that for the city needs. It's obviously not for everyone. Not everyone wants to live in an apartment, but for younger people and those that enjoy the city centre lifestyle, then it's obviously a good choice for them. And the plans for the improved public realm and public open space, I think, are to be welcomed as well. So that the point that Councillor Kerr made earlier on about having some amenity space as part of the development, that will be incorporated into it. And this isn't the final decision. It's got to go to the Secretary of State, as Mr. Clark's mentioned, and we'll be coming back for further detailed approval to this committee, where we'll have an opportunity to look at it in more detail, and for the heritage organisations to have further input as well. For those reasons, I think the principle is exactly the right one, and I'll be supporting it, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Kerr.
What's on that site at the moment doesn't have any architectural merit, but at least it's, for some people, it is not seen from a long way away, and not seeing something can mean that you don't criticise it. Whereas whatever goes here, if it is to be even half the height of what is being proposed, it will be seen from a long way away, and therefore the architectural merit of something that is brought back to us for approval needs to be of considerable worth. And I think that needs to be of considerable worth, both close up, but also from a distance. It needs to be more than a square, rectangular block, whatever colour or covering that is. It needs to have something that is of interest, something that people will remember Derby for, and the vast majority of them in a positive way. The comments that I've had back about the recent building which we now see where Debenhams was, people aren't impressed by that in the comments that I've received. And although we thought we were approving something that had some merit, I think we failed. So whatever is to come here, it needs to be significantly better. And my view is that the number of significant height blocks may be too much for that site. I think people may feel that the density, when seen together from a distance, the number of blocks there together will look more massive than when you're close to, because you won't see the things between them, even if there are now trees growing up between them. So I think I'm not convinced that a development to the extent that is being proposed will actually be acceptable. I think it may be too high. Some of the not just the highest block may be too high, but also some of the other blocks may need to come down as well. But the principle of doing something there and taking away some of the excess retail capacity within the centre is the right thing to do. But I am just really cautious about what comes back. I am not feeling, in my mind, that the that we are right, will be right to approve something that is as massive as what they're looking for in terms of the outline. I think it may need to be downsized a bit from that, but let's see what comes back.
We're not that, Paul.
Just on those couple of points, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kerr have both hit on it's the quality. We're being asked on this site, buildings of up to these stories, these heights, are they acceptable? And the design review panel is in your papers. They suggested, in principle, great, we love it. We want to be involved in the scrutiny of that quality. They've got to come back with reserved matters applications for each and all of the phases, and no doubt we'll be debating the quality, whether it's good enough for Derby or not. The design review panel want to be involved in the discharge of conditions, unusual for them, because they want to be involved in the particular materials that are used on the buildings and not leave it to the planners for the conditions, etc. So it's all got the interest of everybody who wants to be a player in this and make sure this is effectively good enough for Derby. And so you will be getting reserved matter schemes back as and when they progress through the planning process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very much in favour of this application. I think we're long overdue of seeing Derby being in an actual city and have a city skyline. My one word of caution is around air quality. I do note that the report mentions it would have been preferable to have a more detailed model on the air quality assessment, and it does mention the use of mechanical ventilation. My concern is the London Road elevation, is we are sort of creating another Agard Street with canyoning and all that sort of thing. So I would like at some point there to be, you know, a lot more sort of respect made towards air quality, and make sure that we're not creating problems, particularly with, you know, buses, and it's quite a high usage route, and particularly we've got residential in this application potentially in the future. I think we just need to make sure that we're doing the right things at the right times, that's all. But generally I'm in favour of this application.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an opportunity. I think this area of Derby has very little architectural merit, Councillor Kerr has suggested. And I think that this really does present, if done correctly, it could actually be an amazing gateway to this area of Derby, and a significant asset to the city centre, have huge economic benefits as well, and springboard revitalisation of this area of the city. But we do need to remember, of course, that it's Derby on area that has somewhat sucked the life out of some of the other areas of the city centre, and so I think that needs to be in the mix as well moving forward as to how we potentially resolve that. The drift away from the other areas of the city centre as well is a concern. But for here and now tonight, certainly support this. Very much looking forward to what is proposed moving forward, because it has to be right. It has to be of the highest quality for Derby, fit for the future, excellent architectural merit, and it needs to be something which we can support as a planning committee and as a city. And so, note of caution that we're expecting, I mean, I certainly are expecting an extremely high quality proposal when we move forward. But here and now, I support this, and I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Thank you. Lucy, do you want to come in again?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair, to indulge, and thank you for indulging me. The just the other point I should have mentioned as well is that although there were quite a lot of comments in the report about the importance of energy and sustainability related to transport, it's fairly well understood that if you are living in a very high building, it's much harder to have that as environmentally sustainable, both in terms of construction, obviously there's going to be a lot of concrete and steel within it, but also in terms of use. There aren't many people who will walk up more than 3, maximum 4 floors to be able to get to where they live. So there will be lifts, there will be, as already been mentioned, forced ventilation. And when what comes back, I would very much like to have some indication of the energy of that building in use. We've, as referenced in the report, we have acknowledged that there is a climate emergency and we, as a city, have to address that. And saving on transport, energy and carbon, we also need to be mindful of the housing, energy and carbon. So we need to see how they are addressing those sorts of issues in further information.
Thanks, Lucy. I'd just like to sum up, if everyone's had their say on that. I'll go along with virtually everything that everyone's said. Councillor Bolton, Councillor Rawson, Councillor Holmes, everyone's saying that this has got to make a statement for Derby, I think. And I think this sort of, that where it is, it's the gateway. We don't want a rectangular building with lots of little windows in. We want something that's going to put Derby on the map, and that this could be Derby's Shard. Let's go that big. Let's go that big. It's my first meeting and that's it. So I'll lay a statement down. We did have a pre-agenda meeting yesterday where we discussed a few things like this, and that's the sort of thing that Derby needs. It doesn't need more rectangular buildings where people are going to be living. It doesn't need a rectangular office block. We've got a few of those in the city already. We need something that will say, have you been to that office building in Derby? It's the so-and-so. We can choose names later, don't worry about that. But it's just got to make a statement. That place where it is, that is the gateway, and you'll be able to see it from all over the city. And that's my end of comments, really, if nobody else has got any more, unless Paul wants to come in on that one.
I just want to follow that, Chair, and say the applicant and his team are here. As you know, they're not speaking tonight because there are other speakers who haven't come. Yes, they're smiling. They've heard everything you've said and members have said, and no doubt we will be expecting those high-quality schemes before. If they're not high quality, we'll say so. You know, you're quite at liberty, as we did in the training, you're quite at liberty to say, well, that's not good enough for Derby for these reasons. So, there's nothing more I can say, Chair. It's been said.
Thank you, Paul. It has been noted, hasn't it? Thank you very much. Move to the vote. Second on that one, Councillor Bolton. All those in favour?
That's 8 in favour, Chair.
That's carried. So that's application passed. All those against? Anyone against? No. That's granted. Thank you very much. That's all the applications. Potential future site visits. Sarah again, is that you, Sarah? Thank you very much.
Okay, we've got 7 site visits or majors on the list for you to decide whether or not you wish to visit them as a site visit. And the first one is Osmaston Road. Members may be familiar with this site. It's a former Victorian mill just south of the DRI site. It's proposed conversion of the building to form apartments, 64 apartments, and then demolition of some commercial buildings at the back to the erection of 2 apartment blocks, 6 houses and an office building. might be worth a visit. Yeah, it is quite. You can't really see much of it from Osmaston Road. So. Okay.
Do we put that to the vote? All those in favour? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that one. Next one is a variation of condition. So this is the approved primary school at St Mary's. So it's just a very minor change. Yeah.
That's good enough to tell us now.
Sorry. Well, we're not actually considering the application.
No, it's just the site visit. This is a Derby Homes scheme for the Warwick House has now been demolished. This erection of 22 2- and 3-storey houses. You can see most of it pretty much from the highway. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, this one's Rolls-Royce Wainsway, get my teeth in. Demolition of office building, correction manufacturing facility. You can pretty much see it from Wainsway.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is, yeah.
it is, yeah, it's on the site. Well, again, this is another variation of condition to student accommodation which is currently being built. Again, minor change. Okay. This is going to be Infinity Park, next phase of the industrial development, large industrial warehouse unit, gatehouse, external yard, etc. It's very much on field, so you can see it. And last, but by no means least, next phase 4, plot 5 of the Smart Park development.
Can I just say on that, Sarah, I went down to there the other day because we were talking about some of the roadworks that's happening in Chad at the moment. So we're invited down to the site. That site is absolutely amazing. If you've never been down there, I would suggest a little site visit. It's a fantastic place. It really is. If you see what's there now, and I didn't realise how many buildings have been built there, and it really is a fantastic site, and they've got future plans as well, so yeah. Ian's just trying not to listen at the moment, so
No, I know the site manager well. If you wanted a wider tour, I'm sure he would give you one, because that's where HelloFresh is located. Their main HQ is down there. So if you wanted to pick up some food whilst you were down there. I'll speak to the site manager, Chair, and you obviously need the full PPE, of course, because it's a live site, so we need to arrange all that, but I'm sure he would do that. If we got numbers for if everybody was confirmed who would attend, then we could set something up. Yeah.
So on I visited the nature reserve when I used to work at Courtaulds on that site 30, 40 years ago. And I hope it has flourished even more since. So I don't know whether it's worth taking binoculars with us to see what's there.
all those in favour of the site visit at Smart Park? Carried. Okay, thank you, Sarah. That concludes the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, for being so kind to me. And we'll see you all in July. Thank Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, officers as well. Thank you.